Jim, how are you, mate?
Good, thank you.
Thank you so much for coming in. I know you're a very, very busy man.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm going to say an apology straight off. I did this with Brian too, because I get asked to do about 10 of these a year, and I always say no. And it's not because I'm being rude. It's just because you get to this time of year and you literally don't have a bloody second to yourself. And I think, no, I'm already busy enough. But what you did, which was smart, and Brian did as well, is ask in the off season. Then you can't come up with a reason to say no. You just got to go, oh yeah, no worries, that sounds fine. And then you get, I mean, this is all good, but you get to sort of June, July, you're thinking, why the hell do I? So all those people that have asked and I've said no, I'm sorry about that.
Unlike those shows, though, Jim, people actually listen to this one, so you're actually going to be heard today, which is exciting.
Those people will all be going, asshole. I asked him, he said no. So my apologies.
No, mate, I know how busy it is, and I am fully aware that it pains me as well when I do ask someone to come on the show or we do contact someone. I know myself how fucking annoying that is, but I like to think that once it's done, you never regret it. It's like jumping in the ocean. It's cold, you don't want to fucking do it, but as you do, you come up, you feel a bit better about yourself.
I was on the plane coming back from the Adelaide Geelong game, sitting next to this really nice bloke who's a car dealer out of Adelaide, and he obviously is a footy fan and he listens and watches and all the rest of it. And he started listing. He goes, mate, I've always, because I obviously spent a lot of time in Adelaide. He said, I've always followed what you do. He started listing all the shit off, and he knew more about what I did than I did. And at the end of it, I looked at him. I said, that sounds like a lot, doesn't it? I said, when actually someone enunciates what it looks like. But I said to him, mate, you got to remember, it's not shoveling coal. You're the same. I mean, you're time busy. But it's not. You're not on the tools. You're not bloody getting up at 5:30 in the morning and going onto a building site. So I've got to remind myself that even though you've got a lot to do, it's not. It's not strenuous.
It's all relative,
you're not killing
isn't it?
yourself.
Well, yeah, it's all relative. Like you can find troubles in anything. But I'm very lucky to get to come in here. It's like for you especially too, and maybe this is more of a question than a statement, but it feels like since finishing up sport, you're in elite sport as well, playing cricket. Like it feels like I've never left now. You're doing the same thing, which I think when I was playing sport, the thing I thought I loved was the game.
Yep.
But I actually just love just being around mates.
Yep.
And I'm still doing that today.
Yeah, so you're lucky with that, and I am too. I always say this to people about the summer. Bluey, Punter, Lang, Matty Hayden, Simon Kadich. I mean, these are 35, 40-year mates of mine, and I get to hang out with them all summer. So you're on planes, you're at hotels, you're at the ground, you're talking smack out the back when you're not on air, and it's the same dribble that we all carried on with when we played. It's nothing's changed. We have a go at Lang because he's so short and hasn't got any hair, but it's the same juvenile crap that you would have had when you were in the dressing room. Nothing changes. But it's, 35 years later, you're still hanging out with your best mates. And that's a cool job.
If you had to pick a team, right, you're going head to head, and I don't know where you're going with this, but think you had to pick a team, your cricket team or your Triple M footy team, who would you pick to be stuck on an island with?
Well, it would probably be the cricket boys because I think in so many ways we've got more life experience in common. We've been so, especially Bluey and I, we roomed together for 7-8 years. Yeah, wow. I wasn't very sophisticated for South Australia. It was BR and BL, so we were sat next to each other on the plane. We roomed in this, together in hotels for literally 7 straight years. So we start pissing ourselves laughing at stuff that it just suddenly flashes back that this happened in Brisbane or Perth or whatever, and I say to Bluey, how the hell do we even remember that? That happened in the early 90s. But it's so, even though I love all the Triple M boys, they're nuts, they're footy boys. Probably if I had to choose, it would be the cricket only because of the length of time together,
You recently got married, was that last year?
Last November,
congratulations.
Thank you.
Big dogs at the wedding, I'm sure, from both parties. Gil was the MC.
Gil was the MC. And he did a great job. I said to him, mate, this is both of our second time around. Yeah. So I said, don't spare the horses. And he got a bit nervous, actually. Very rare to see him nervous, but he got a bit nervous because he thought, how far can I go? He said, your mum and dad are going to be there. And he was very complimentary of Lisa. So it was a roasting of me pretty much. And I said to him, mate, do not leave anything out. Go as hard as you like. So he sort of got off to a start that was, I thought, wow, it's a bit sort of conservative. Yeah. And anyway, introduced the first lot of speakers. And I thought, wow, I'm surprised, Anyway, what I didn't know is he was coming back 2 more times. And then in the second time he came back harder. And then the last time he just opened up all the valves, and it was just an absolute smashing. And it was exactly what I wanted him to do. And the people there were just pissing themselves laughing. Like it was, going from you're the most moisturised man in the history of television, and it was just gold because that's what I love about our friendship is it's always been that brutal sort of feedback thing, like you would be with all your mates. And I just said, mate, it's a fun party. It's not a formal wedding, so charge your hardest, and he did.
Who at that period as well? You all know what it's like at a wedding. You're getting dappered up. Everyone's looking good. There's big dogs there, as we said, and everyone's good guys off the field, good men and women.
Yep.
Who was the one who they thought they were the biggest though? Like, was there any? Who was the biggest ego there? Do you think?
I don't know. You could even go there, Dyl, because there are that many egos. Yeah. I don't think anyone's, But it was funny because we did this resort chic thing, and what I found hilarious about it is it should have been obvious to me beforehand, but once I got there, the girls all got it, and they all dressed. Like in these amazing colours and floral patterns and, like summer, almost races type. They all looked brilliant. But the blokes had no idea. So they're putting the wrong jacket with the wrong pants and the wrong shoes, and then and at one stage he said that BT was dressed like a bus driver, and he was. He had a short sleeve shirt on.
No.
It's a button-up short sleeve shirt.
Brian.
Like Brian. So, but you know what, mate? For me, that made it better.
Yeah.
Because we just wanted everyone to have fun. We didn't want anyone to feel, like it was stuffy or you had placemats and you had to sit where you're told. And, it was just a great restaurant and a great fun night, and everyone just had a ball. That's all we wanted.
That's what you want.
Yep.
Going back to your sort of start, so you're finishing up at cricket, you're playing cricket. How did that media transition look? And the biggest question for me always was, being a cricketer, like, were you mates with the guys before you started coming in and working with them, or was it?
Well, I'll tell you how it happened. I remember sitting in the South Australian dressing rooms at the Adelaide Oval. I crossed over with David Hooks for 1 year, and we were sitting in the rooms, maybe before training, I can't remember, before a day's play, and he used to call me Sticks, which is my father's nickname and my older brother's nickname actually, but no one, Ian Botham and Hook, the only two that ever called me Sticks. I don't know, out of respect for Dad, I'm sure. So I remember looking across the room, and he said, Sticks, what do you want to do outside of playing cricket? And I said, I've always thought about the media, electronic media a bit, He goes, all right, leave it with me, and didn't say another word. And Hooksy was one of those blokes that could often, promise the earth and deliver an atlas, not just because his mind was so scattergun, he's everywhere. So he could easily say that and then nothing had happened. So I wasn't holding my breath. And then about 2 days later, we walked back into the rooms, and he just had a bit of paper in his hand. He flicked it. He said, give this bloke a ring. And I looked at it. A bloke called Max Stevens, who was the newsreader for Seven over there, but also a pretty sort of big name in media in that town. He said, ring him, So I rang him and I said, David Hook suggests I give you a ring. He goes, yeah, good, come in, So I went into Channel 7 Adelaide, started doing some sport breaks on a morning television show in Adelaide. I don't even know what it was called. But you'd have the male and the female hosts of, brekkie television. Not even brekkie, it was like 10 o'clock till 12 or 11:30. So I'd literally go in there and just talk about cricket or footy or whatever sport was going on in Adelaide with them at the bench just before they did a cooking segment or just after they did a female fashion segment. I mean, it was a bizarre thing. But it was, looking back, was a great soft start, if you like, because, no one was scrutinising it. You weren't getting, sort of belted if you didn't do it very well, which I'm sure I didn't. But what happened, we were just talking about this off air before, what happened was it then spun off into SAFM, which was the hit network, Triple M sister station in Adelaide. They had a guy doing sport on the half hour for them that was going to have a 3-week holiday. So they rang me and said, we've seen what you've done on whatever the bloody hell it was called. With this guy's on holidays, do you want to come in and do sport on the half hour while he's away? Why not? So I just turned up and did a prepared sort of 30-second to a minute sport break in the breakfast show, every half hour. Did that for 3 weeks, went away. I was back into my playing time. I sort of back 2 or 3 years. And the boss of Triple M SAFM in Adelaide rang me about, I reckon 6 months later, and said, those sports breaks you did, we'd actually like you to come on full time and do them because that bloke has left. And I went, yeah, okay. So my last 2 years of playing, I would get up in the morning, go into SAFM, do that, and then go to the Adelaide Oval and play. So that's where that sort of headed. And at the same time, the newsroom then said, look, we'll do a cross to you wherever, the Gabba or bloody, the Wacker or whatever, and just do a pre-recorded cross to the news talking about the day's play. So I'd finish, playing for the Sacker on that day, and then I'd put a 7 shirt on and go and find wherever they'd set the camera up, and I'd just stand there and do a, Q&A with the sport reader back in Adelaide. So those sort of two things were where it all started, and then it just spun off from there. That's pretty much it. So my last 2 or 3 years of playing, I was also investing in trying to get that started, so I had somewhere to go. And then we won the Shield in '96, and then about 2 months later, they came to me and said, we now want you to do the breakfast show full stop, do the whole show. And they were offering, I reckon it was about 85 grand, which in the mid-90s, when I was playing, my last year of playing Shield cricket, we played in the one-day final and won the Shield final. So therefore, I played the maximum amount of first-class games you could play that year without being an Australian player, which obviously I wasn't. And I'll never forget, my group certificate came in and I made $36,500 gross before tax. So take that out. You can hear him pissing himself laughing. So you take the tax out of that and you're ending up with 22 grand, for a whole year of playing professional sport. So when the job offer came to do brekkie, it was an easy. I had a second son on the way and it was just like, I can't justify not doing it. So 28, I was finished playing cricket. And to be honest, Dyl, I walked off the Wacker in my last game, woke up the next morning and thought, how haven't I done this years ago? I didn't in the end enjoy playing it that much, to be honest. I did it because I needed to work, but the enjoyment of the game had evaporated from me a bit, so it was an easy decision.
Fuck, it's awesome, man. It's an incredibly eerily similar time. Like I was 28 when I finished.
Yep.
I think my contract at the Giants was about the same as yours, albeit about.
Well, you were in a good professional era.
Yeah, that was about 20 years later, and it was still the same. I think my last contract, I've said this publicly before, but I was on 70 grand living in Sydney, rookie wages, lost money playing football.
Yep.
Mind you, I did live in Paddington. I probably could have gone out to Parramatta, but it was more of a lifestyle thing for me too, and just thought, how good was this? But I used to go on my last 2 years because I got delisted from Carlton. And then when I got up there, I was like, fuck, I got nothing. I need to work it out. So I actually went and did part-time work with the Rush Hour in Sydney where I was playing with MG and Liam. So MG's like nearly similar to a Billy Brownless type of Sydney, but it's the same thing. And then we got to that time and I was eerily like, fuck, I'm not actually I actually like this better than what I'm doing right now. And it was cool to change the position.
I think what people don't understand about decent level sport is if you're going to be any good at it, you've got to put yourself under a lot of pressure to, to get better, or to maintain a level, or to increase the level, or whatever. And so I always thought the pressure you put on yourself is far greater than any coach or captain or selector puts on you from outside. And it's constant. You go to sleep with that pressure, you wake up with that pressure, you drive to the ground with that pressure. Because you're driven to play well. So I don't know whether you were like this, but certainly for me, as soon as I retired, it was like someone lifted a grand piano off my back. I didn't have that pressure anymore. The everyday gnawing of, you get three games into the year. We used to play 10 Shield games. 3 games into the year, I'd be sitting in the car going, I've made 208 runs. I'm averaging 38. I've got to get my act together. I've got to make some, I've got to start delivering. So then you're thinking, right, well, knuckle down. And so I'd be sitting at dinner and people look at me and go, you haven't heard a word I just said, have you? And I go, man, I'm sorry, I haven't. And it'd be because it's all consuming. You literally, I was anyway, you're literally driving yourself to be the best player you can be. And that comes with a lot of pressure that you place on yourself. So as soon as I finished playing, I'm like, how come I haven't been living like this for the last 10 years? It was just smiling and relaxed and happy, and I was a completely different person.
I think that kicked in for me for 12 months. And then after that, you start going, fuck. I think once you play sport at a high level, or you do business at a high level, or you just like getting the best out of yourself,
Yep.
you pick that tendency back up. And I found that after that, you go, no, now I want to be the best podcast or the best TV.
Yep.
Did you end up finding that you put that pressure back on yourself getting into the next phase? Or
Not as much, because I find with this business, it's all about preparation. As long as you prepare properly, then when you get there, you got all the tools you need. Whereas with cricket, you can prepare as well as you like, and as well as you can. But a bloke can stand on his head in the gully, and you're out second ball, or you can, get a bloody Glenn McGrath, pitching middle and leg and hitting the top of off, and that's getting everyone out. So you're walking off thinking, I've done all the prep and I still made no runs. Whereas I find with this, if you really work hard, then I don't find you get like nervous or anxious or any of that, because you think, well, I've done all the work. So I don't. You still put your pressure on yourself to perform at a proper level that justifies calling Friday night football or doing the rush hour with Bill. Or you still got to get your head around what you're doing. But I don't find the crushing pressure that I put on myself to play well.
Yeah, for sure. No, I completely agree. I've got a young son. He's nearly 1, and I don't know if you do this the whole time you're a dad, but the last year especially has just been this point of reflection of sport.
Yep.
And just how incredible it is for anyone to play. And it's just like this all equalizer of, like you said before, you can be doing the best thing possible because things still don't go your way.
Yep.
But I feel like that's personally set me up for a really good chapter, because you just, I look back at my career now, and maybe you can relate to this too, but I feel like sometimes I trained harder than Chris Judd.
Yeah.
But it didn't work.
Yep.
You're not saying that he's just a name I'm using.
Yeah.
People are going to laugh at that. But you know what I mean? Like, you could do what you want to do. Sometimes it does, and that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
But when you get into this field of work, if you do that, you're going to see a reward. Yeah,
and I mean, blokes are, you just play with people that are better players than you are. I mean, I played with Darren Lehman, and he was just a freak. Just a freakish talent. So you just stand at the other end. I did anyway, just in awe of the shit he used to do. And I just looked at it and said, mate, as long as I've got, a hole in my bum, I'm never going to be able to do any of that. Like he just had this incredible ability to do things with a cricket bat that I never saw anyone else do. And Chris Judd's, funnily enough, I just saw him at the Grand Prix yesterday. I have him. I didn't see Lee Matthews, so for me, it's Wayne Carey was the best player I ever saw, and then that group of big forwards, Dunstall, Lockett, Ablett, were probably the next. I mean, they were all freaks. But, outside of that, he's the best footballer I've seen play the game, Chris Judd. He was just ridiculous.
Talk us through, because I was somewhat lucky enough to see the other side of Juddy that people might not see. And I think Triple M, when he's on and when he was on consistently, he's got to be one of the funniest blokes, smartest, wittiest guys.
Yep.
Like, what was it like working with him post-career?
Well, I didn't actually, sadly, I didn't do a lot of, he was Friday night when I'd come out of Friday nights to do telly, so I didn't work with him that night. He used to come into the rush hour semi sort of regularly. But I just said to Lisa, my wife, yesterday, because we were chatting to him at the races, I said, mate, he's just a freak because he doesn't care. He's as loose as a bloke as you'll come across. Doesn't take himself seriously. I think he's got a very good understanding of how good he was, but he's not. He doesn't measure himself by that. He doesn't think like, oh, well, I was a superstar. Like yesterday, it was so funny because Beck was there, and he's got the grid walk pass around his neck, and he's looking at me, and he's going, and then he looks at Beck and goes, she can take all the pretty photos and she can have her all Instagram fans, but she hasn't got one of these. And I'm looking at him. Anyway, he flipped it around because it was a big bastard grid pass, He flipped it around and it said, Chris Judd, former AFL player. I said, is that it? Is that all you get? You don't get 2 times Brownlow medalist or Norm Smith medalist, or you just former AFL player.
Now he's big dog investor. That's all he's
But he just doesn't care, mate. That's what I love about him. I'm drawn, Dyl, to people that don't take themselves seriously, and that's certainly Juddy. He's a great fun player.
You've worked with some incredible people, and I think I will say this. I know you don't. You're very not egotistical man, and you don't often talk about yourself. But one thing I really admire about you, especially getting into this game, is I found you've had such an incredible balance of like hosting, humility, being funny but also being serious, and it's such a good mix to be able to do both. Is that like what you've tried to do, or is it just who you think you've sort of become?
I think that, one of the most important things about being a host is getting the best out of the people that you're working with. And that on radio is a very different thing to television. Radio is obviously a lot more humour attached to that. All you're really doing is putting platforms down so that, whether it's Sam and Gary, or whether it's Bill, or whether it's Damo, or whether it's Bernie Vince now, or whoever, Hodgie and Richo on this Friday night, you're just putting a platform down so they can bring their best stuff to the broadcast. So in a lot of ways, I think hosting is not about you at all. The less it's about you, the better the product is. It's about getting all of these superstars to bring to air what they're best at. This same car dealer bloke I was talking to on the plane, I said, where I have been blessed is the quality of people that I've been able to work with. They're just extraordinarily talented. Like, just going back to Sam Newman, people can have whatever thought they have on Sam, and they're entitled to it because he put what he put out there, and he knew that he'd polarise, and doesn't care either, by the way. But so you can think what you like of him, but what you can't say is that he wasn't an extraordinary talent. He was just breathtaking in the stuff he did, radio and TV. So, going from him all the way through to who it is now, they're the best in the business. To Ricky Ponting and what he's bringing to cricket commentary, But I was also very, very lucky to work with Richie and Bill and Ian Chappell. So the blokes that I've had the privilege of sitting next to, that's what's humbling. They're some of the best broadcasters the world's ever seen, let alone Australia. When people say, young blokes say to me, I'm getting into this business, what's your best bit of advice? I always say the same thing. I said, mate, don't ever do it for money. Find the best people and work with them. The money will find you if you work with the best people and prepare and do the best work you can. But there's no substitute for quality sitting next to you.
That's a fantastic point. Very, very good point. Favourite memories or things that come to mind when working with the Footy Show? Again, I grew up watching, anyone my age grew up watching the Footy Show every night, like whenever it was on. Incredible memories, Incredible show. What was, some of your favourite moments you think going back? I know it's hard.
No, there's the obvious ones like, there are thousands. I did it for 11 years. When Gary...
The broken leg on the stretcher.
Oh, no, that was just too funny. But then he...
Did he?
He went and bought, I don't know, was it around here somewhere, in Richmond somewhere. He went and bought a potato, one of those ones in foil with the sour cream and everything. Yep. But they didn't put enough coleslaw in it. Okay. So Gary said to the young bloke behind the jump, mate, you haven't put enough coleslaw in it. And somehow, and I don't know how, that got back to Sam. And anyway, so we're sitting on the set the next show, and Gary's sitting there, and Sam's got this stupid look on his face. And I didn't know what was coming up either. So I'm like, what? Something's going on. What is it? And Sam goes, Gary, did you buy a potato in foil in Richmond on the weekend? And Gary's looking at him going, yes. And did you have a go at the young bloke behind the jump for the fact that he didn't put enough coleslaw in it? You could always tell with Gary when he knew he was done, because he'd start getting this sweat on the top of his lip, And I'm looking at him going, oh, I like this. I like where this is headed. No, I didn't. And Sam goes, Gary, I'm going to ask you again. Did you say to the young man that he hadn't put enough coleslaw in? Gary goes, all right, it might have been a bit light on coleslaw. And as he said it, from above, a whole, truckload of coleslaw just landed on him. Literally just just landed on top of him. And he tried to act as if he hadn't cracked the shits, but he had. And I was crying. I was laughing that hard. I was literally just covered in coleslaw. So, that sort of thing. And Sam, I turned around, and he's just got his head on the desk just thumping. So, it's that sort of thing that I absolutely loved, because, the thing with that show is all the people on it were great friends. There was no, the hierarchy was obvious. Sam was the man. Whatever he sort of wanted to do, we did and made sure it worked because he was the star of the show. But, Croft and Bill, and I mean, it was just awesome. And the footballers that came in all understood exactly what it was they bought in, so it was a great fun vehicle because those people were great fun to work with.
Yeah, incredible. I think a lot goes, like when you see stuff like that too, you just think that it comes natural, but I'm sure there was that chemistry built over years. It takes a lot of time to play your role in that sort of thing.
Well, we'd obviously done Triple M together too for years, so we all got on really well. Sam's the most incredibly generous man. I mean, not only financially generous, but incredibly generous with his time. I mean, I first came in 2001, 2, 3, around there to do breakfast radio for Triple M, but also do the footy. And Dyl, I was a minnow, mate. I've turned up, and I remember walking into the Triple M for the first time, and there was Dermot and Sam and BT, Jason Dunstall. I mean, these are superstars. These are the best footballers the game's put together for the previous sort of 20 years. And the other thing about it is, I mean, you and I have got this in common too. Neither of us are big men. They're monsters. So 4 or 5 of them in the room, and they're all 110 kilos and 6'6", and so I'm sitting in the middle of these blokes going, "How have I ended up here?" And it was pretty daunting, But one of the reasons that it worked for me was Sam was so beautifully generous. He right from the start, "You all right?" He used to invite me over to his house for dinner. Pick me up because the apartment I had was between Brighton and the ground, so he always just picked me up. So, the fact that he sort of had my back right from the start meant that I think everyone else thought, well, if Sam likes him, then, it's good enough for us. And so I'll never forget that because it could have easily gone the other way and then it would have been a pretty hard sort of road. So I love that about him. He was always great to me.
Yeah, that's crazy. Triple M, I know you said before about the cricket boys and the obviously connection there of playing with them and whatnot, but over the last sort of period of working with Rush Hour and with Billy, and how strong are those memories? Like we were chatting before, literally before you came in, there's too many stories to even bring up of the favourite periods of that.
Well, there's 2 parts to Triple M, actually now with cricket there's 3, but there's the footy, which is very separate, funnily enough, to the Rush Hour, even though a lot of the people cross over.
Yeah, so is that like what's Triple M footy and then one's more the radio show?
Well,
or
it's just,
different producers?
Just the drive show is a completely different animal to Saturday afternoons.
Yeah.
And the Saturday rub is the thing more than anything that people stop me in the street about. And it's all around Australia. All through the summer when you're doing the cricket, people just come up all the time and go, "Mate, that shit from 12 o'clock on a Saturday." And they say, especially the first 15 minutes, they say, "Mate, well, I can't miss it. I don't care what I'm doing. I always make sure that I'm in the car or at home and I've got the radio on from 12 to at least 15:15. And, the funny thing about that is it's literally completely unscripted. No one knows. Like, you always find out some dirt on, like, if Fat's done something stupid during the week, or if I've done something stupid, or Damo's, hosted a thing and it was a flatliner, or, Bernie's, whatever it is, you always know you've got 2 or 3 areas you can go to. But no one writes anything down. It literally just starts and it's just a free-for-all. And it was always like that, going back to when Gary and Spud were on there and previously when Dermot and Sam were on. I mean, it was just unscripted mayhem. And, when it was your turn to cop it, you copped it, and there was no one had any complaints. You knew it was coming from a place of love. Yep. But when someone had, especially Spud, when we had mail on Spud, like, when he had his teeth whitened or when he asked for the makeup.
The makeup is one of the funniest things I've ever heard in my life. No.
And that just literally came out of an email that he accidentally sent to my brother.
So he didn't know any of that?
No, he had no idea.
Like, because we were listening to it before, and again, we'll share the note on this, and maybe even if you can elaborate on the story. But that is one of the funniest things I've ever heard.
Yeah. So Mark rang me, and because Mark and Spud were great mates.
Yeah.
And
where did they meet? Like
Richmond. So Mark was CEO of Richmond, and Spud was the coach during that time. And somehow, because when it came to technology, Spud was just he was an idiot. He had no idea how anything worked. So he's trying to send this email to the head of makeup at Fox, and somehow he's hit a group all send, and it's gone out everywhere. So that Saturday morning, obviously Mark, but a whole lot of those old Richmond, the doctors and the people as part of the administration of the club, but then, like, God knows how many people ended up getting it. And Mark said to me, he said, you probably could do you could probably do something with this on Saturday or this afternoon. And I'm like, what is it? anyway, he started telling me. I said, "You send me that. You send me that right now." I said, "Don't alter any of it. Don't just hit forward and send it to me right now." Anyway, so we turned up to the MCG, I reckon it was, and Gary and Damo, and they're like, "Oh, I reckon I've got something for that." I said, "Don't worry." I said, "I've got the whole show in an email right here. So just shut up and let me go." Anyway, so they had no idea. None of them had any idea. Anyway, so I started reading it, and I'm looking at Spud, and literally all the blood drained out of his face. He just ended up like he could see through his teeth to the back of his head. He's just looking at me in horror. And the boys had no idea. So mate, I read it verbatim. I didn't put any mayo on it. I never added any words in. I literally read it line for line. And all I remember is Gary and Damo were they were crying. Yeah. They were laughing that hard. And Spud, when it finally occurred to him what it was, he's just looked at me. He said, "Your brother." And I just said, "Mate, that's the best shit I've ever heard."
It was fucked. Yeah. The 5-minute intro into even talking about releasing it, and you're like, "Nah, we can't do it." And Gary's like, "Read it, read it." It is, and he's even saying, "Come on, read it," not realising it's about him. Yeah,
exactly. He thought it was about Damo or about something else, and he's like, "Yeah, go with it." And then as soon as I started, he's just looked at me and gone, "Oh, I'm gone. I'm finished." There's
such a beauty in not doing the show before the show.
Yeah,
well.
exactly.
Like, it's fucking hard to do. Like I fuck it up every week, but that stuff you can't script it.
No. But then we were talking about this a while ago. He had his moments too, Spud. Like when Gary got invited, we were talking about it with BT the other week. When Gary got invited down to Melbourne when they were going real bad, to try and help their sort of footy department, and he turned up to the first training session with the chinos and the plaited belt and the Ralph Lauren shirt, and Spud. And the photo was in the paper. So Spud got hold of this photo and he got started, and what did he call him? The sheriff. He said he's just like the sheriff, just walking down. Look, he's got the chinos, got the belt, got the polo Ralph Lauren shirt. What a wanker! Anyway, and then he used to get on a roll, and he just found ways to continue. All I can remember is Damo and I are just crying, laughing, and Gary's giving another righto. And as soon as he said righto, you knew he had the shits. So yeah, that's what I say. It was great fun. It still is great fun. Like Bernie Vince. What a great talent.
Yeah.
And he's just come into that show the last couple of years, and, he does the Nuff segment, and he's just so that's been great too, as it's sort of reinvented itself many times along the way, getting different people in. Bill's a legend, obviously. Damo, not only great sort of news.
Damo's a lot funnier than people give him credit for.
Hugely funny.
He's very smart.
He
plays the role very, very well.
No, he totally does. So, no, it's good. And it's just one of those things where you sort of think at times, 12 o'clock Saturday, I'd rather just be sitting on the couch and watching the footy and having a beer. But then you get there and it's just, you have fun straight away.
So good. It'd be remiss of me not to mention Spud, and obviously Spud's game that just took place, doing unbelievable things, the whole, Frawley family.
Yep.
And obviously your connection there as well with the Brayshaws being connected.
Danielle, obviously with Angus, and she's high quality.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because I see Spud in her every time, we're very close. And every time I see her, I just look at her and go, "Your dad." There's just I say to her, the stupid smile he used to get on his face when he was thinking something and it was funny is Danielle. She's such a beautiful blend of her mum and dad. So yeah, it's great. And Anita's great. The girls are great. What they're doing is nuts.
What St Kilda's doing too,
it is
centre and
my young bloke Freddie's in the Sandy Dragons squad. So I go down there a bit, and I said to Danny the other day, I said, the Danny Frawley Centre is just incredible. It is a triumph to that family, and and I mean, we miss Spud every day because he was just a larger than life, ridiculous presence. I mean, it was. If I used to do it all the time, Dyl. If I drive along Beach Road to get to work, if I was driving along and I got bored, I'd just ring him and he'd get this stupid grin. I could hear this stupid cackling, and he'd start telling me about what the hell he'd been up to, and it got you through the drive. He was such a legend. So yeah, we miss him, but when Danielle said something really beautiful, and Chelsea, they were at our place the other week, and they said, when we get flat, and this is the girl saying it, when we get flat, That special you all did about Spud, they said we just hit play, and for an hour, I get emotional. For an hour, we just remember Dad for what a legend he was and how funny he was, and the fun you all had. And then at the end of that hour, we feel better. And I said, girls, that is such a great thing to hear.
Yeah,
it really is.
No, I appreciate you talking about it, mate. It'd be tough, and then for me, even I'd lucky to meet him maybe once or twice, but I think what is incredible the Danny Frawley people are doing, Danny Frawley family's doing, is that I know they would know, but I think like the impact that he has had on men of that age as well, and that's even people like my old man and other guys that are quite stoic and like everyone has issues in their life. The impact he's had is genuinely incredible,
no doubt. And he was just a tour de force, Spud. Like he walked into any room and there was just this energy that came out of him. So, when he was having his battles, that was the hardest bit for all of us, was that energy wasn't there, and we were just so used to over 25 years seeing this, buffhead just walking in and saying, stupid stuff and making people laugh and then when he was struggling and that wasn't there, that was the hardest bit for us. And so I can only imagine what it was like for his immediate family.
Bloody oath. And sending love to the Frawleys and everything they're doing. As we said, we love St Kilda and Claire and the team down there are doing such a good job. We get down as much as we can and do stuff with them.
Yep.
Mate, speaking of your other stuff that you're doing, because we could be here for years talking about what you do. I'd love to talk about North Melbourne.
Yeah.
Because I feel like this was something massively coming through when, obviously with the Footy Show and everything you were doing. How hard was that at the time? And how does one even become a president of the club?
It was totally by accident with me. I allowed Ron Joseph and my brother to talk me into going on a member's ticket because the club was going, so badly in 2007. So I sort of said yes without really thinking it through. And then, we got in a landslide, the three of us. So then I became a director, and literally Dyl had no idea what being a director of a company meant. And then we walked into the place was all over the joint. AFL trying to get us to the Gold Coast, all the rest of it. So long story short, I naively, back into that year, just turned around and said, well, why don't we just have a vote? If the votes that we go, I will vote against going. But if the votes that we go, then that's the vote and get on with it. I mean, it was death by 1,000 cuts the way it was going. So I said, well, why don't we just vote? And my brother wasn't at the meeting, but he'd said, look, if there is a vote, you obviously have my proxy. So I knew Mark and I and Ron were going to vote to stay, but I had no idea what the other directors were going to do. Anyway, we had the vote, and people out there watching who have been directors of companies know you never ever call for a vote unless you know the result already. And I had no idea what the result was. So anyway, I just said, well, bugger it. We can't just sit around.
How many directors at the stage?
I was 9, I reckon.
Yeah.
So in the end, the vote was 5-4 and to stay. So we voted, and then everyone looked around, and quite rightly, the 4 blokes that voted to go said, right, well, I resign from the board, which is the only thing you can do in that situation. So they resigned, and Mark was away, so the 4 of us were left, and one of the other directors turned to me and said, well, you're the president. I said, no, I'm not. Pig's ass, I'm the president. I'm no different to any of you. And they said, mate, you're it. So we pretty much went from there to Dallas Brooks Hall for that big sort of gathering. And that gathering, there were 3,500 people there, and they were all baying for blood because they all thought the meeting was going to be to say the club's going to the Gold Coast, and they were all going to rip the joint down. So when I walked out and said we've had a vote and the vote is to stay, it turned from the walls getting ripped down to like a mass celebration. But Dyl, that was just the start. The next day, for 10 years, it was not me, it was us as a board, but as a administration and Dean / Danny Laidley was awesome. And then Darren Crocker and then Brad Scott and what they could do with footy with limited resources. I mean, you remember the story about how, when I started, Dean had 1 full-time assistant coach and 2 part-time assistant coaches. 2007. We played in a prelim. I mean, what she did as coach of our club was just ridiculous, given the lack of resources. So, yeah, it was 10 years of head down, bum up for everyone. You know, no one more important than anyone else. That was the thing I always drove, you know, the president down to beautiful Carly, who still does. We don't have boot studders anymore, but she still runs the property, and she's as beautiful a North Melbourne person as there is. No one was higher or lower than anyone else. We were all just getting the job done. And so when I think about leaving in 16, we'd eliminated debt. We'd gone from revenue of 23 million to 46. We'd gone from membership at membership at 24,000 to 48,000, I think. So we doubled revenue, doubled membership, eliminated debt. With Tassie, got a new place to go and play 2 or 3 games a year. So the turnaround in that place, which is a credit to everyone who worked there, because mate, as a director, the president's busier, but as a director, you're there once a month for meetings, and you go to the games on the weekend. It's not the board, it's the people that work there that do the work. And we were so lucky. We had incredible staff, built the new facility. So where North was when the board that I had finished compared to where it was when we started was unrecognisable. And I've said this many times before, I think it's one of the great modern administrative miracles of Australian sport. And I take no credit for that. I get wrongly given credit. It's not for me to say that about anything I did. It's, you know, if I take credit for anything, it's that I think we put together an amazing team of people. And the work they did, Carl Delena, CEO, and as I say, Scotty, just nuts. So, I'm not happy like any North fan is with how we're going on the field, although I think we're starting to go in the right direction. But financially and, you know, from a stability point of view, where the club's at now is just incredible. So we're lucky.
I know you said you don't want to take any credit, but I think you might have to. We spoke to Isaac Smith a few weeks ago.
Oh yeah,
great man. Have you worked with him yet?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
Always admired him as a player,
mate. He's one of the most switched on units I've ever spoken to, and like it was really interesting chatting to him about, because it's just sort of refreshing. I hadn't spoken to a player like this before, and since I've left the game, I love business and I love the business of sport, and it was so cool to listen to him talk about picking teams and going to Geelong and why he was so happy at Hawthorn. He said that, you know, it rarely has a lot to do with the players, but how a footy club is run.
Yep.
And, you know, Jeff Kennett being involved at Hawthorn and having strong figures like Clarko and heaps of other people that you wouldn't even know their names, right? The less you know who they are, probably the better. Yep. But that's probably what's really cool about your story, what you're saying before about North, like to be able to, you can't have sustained success without a strong club.
No, that's true.
So you can probably have glimpses of like winning flags maybe, but sustained success takes a really good business to actually go well.
It does. And, you know, you've got to have a footy strategy. It's got to be very clear. You've got to really, as a board, you've got to hold your footy department to the strategy they create. It's not the board's strategy. It's their, you know, this is how
club, they're so insular.
Yeah, exactly.
Like they build and just go on themselves. That's the biggest thing that I loved was you look at sort of like what Richmond have done over the last little bit. Instead of caving in on that pressure, especially in Melbourne, you got to stick fat.
No, you do, and you must be aligned from top to bottom. This is the path we're going. You know, I really like what Brad Scott said in the off season with Essendon. You know, he you know, I'll paraphrase, but he basically said, you know, I can give you a sugar hit if you want, but it won't be sustained. You know, we'll have a little, you know, patch of being good, but he said if you want me over 10 years to build something that's going to work over the long haul, then we've got some hard decisions to make and some tough yards ahead of us. But we'll get there. And when we get there, we'll stay there, you know. And I love that because that, if I'm an Essendon fan, that's what I want to hear. You know, I don't want a little, you know, we might sneak into 7th and we might even win a final, but in 3 years' time, we're no further down the track. What I want to hear him say is, you know, we're going to put things in place so that we can have a sustained run at being, you know, in the top 4 and a chance at a grand final and a premiership. And I hope that's what Clarko's doing at North. I'm sure he is.
Yeah. Speaking of that, and I don't know if I'm out of school here, but I remember like with that, Brad Scott, obviously towards the end of his career, he sort of wanted to rebuild a little bit.
Yep. I'd gone by then, but
you'd gone by then, but he wanted to rebuild a bit, and that was when started getting some older players in that then ultimately probably set it back a little bit more.
Yeah, it did. And time again, I'm sure they wouldn't have gone down that path.
Yeah.
And Brad, in the end, sort of said, well, look, you know, you're at odds with me and the way I think we should go forward.
I didn't know that. I think that people maybe judged him harshly on that, but that was...
Yeah.
Now that's come out that it was.
Yeah. No, he's quality, mate. He was awesome for us.
Andrew Dillon said that he'd be his number one pick to go to Tasmania.
Yeah. No, he's just. Chris is the same. They're ferocious for a start. They're just animal competitors. I mean, you and I played sport with some competitive people, but they are. I think they're at another level.
Yeah.
Like there are times, and I'm the president of the club, and we'd had a bad loss. And so you'd go down and you'd go into the rooms and you'd go into the coaches, the area where the theatre seats where they're going to have the debrief afterwards. And, there's probably only one or two people in there. But you're down there flying the flag because, it's all of our club. And if we have a bad day, we're all in it, So I'd walk in and I'd look at Brad and honestly, mate, his eyes would roll back. I'm thinking to myself, if I'm in a pub, I'm thinking he's going to punch me in the head in a minute. But he's obviously, he was that competitive.
Who did he run through again on the field? Was it Kingy?
Oh, after when he was coaching, he didn't quite. He just went past. But I mean, he only.
I love it though.
Oh,
but isn't that coming back though now? Like you look at what Papley did on the weekend with Sydney and Essendon, like just that truthfulness of footy. Everyone fucking loves it.
Oh, I agree.
Does it get it? Yeah. Does it get frustrating for you? Obviously with 7 and on that game day experience, do you wish it was more open and flowing like that?
Oh,
through players, I mean.
Yeah, I like it when it is.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen much. I mean, we could go for another 2 hours on how politically correct our world has become. I mean, I think it's just so stupid where we've headed. But so when I didn't actually, I saw the article on it. Oh, sorry, I saw the article on it, but I didn't actually see the thing live. But I love Tommy Papley for a start, and if he's flying the flag for his blokes, good.
Yeah, I love Papley.
Yeah, good. That's what we want. By the way, how good is Isaac Heaney going?
Fantastic.
It's
I think he's
ridiculous.
needed to be completely honest. I think the last couple of years he's been a little bit not on his potential of what he could be.
Well, and I think a lot of that's because of the place in the ground that he plays, and that's not criticising Horse. It's just they use him in that high forward role.
Yeah.
And I've always looked at him. He was Angus's draft.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing them both coming through because I kept an eye on that draft, given Angus's quality at that age. And I remember thinking, mate, this kid is going to be a freak. Like he's going to be the Marcus Bontempelli of his draft. He's such an incredible midfield talent. And then he went to Sydney and they had lots of midfielders, so he went forward and basically has stayed there. And that's the role, and that's fine. Angus had to do a lot of that. Had to go to half-back and wing because they were stocked in the middle of the ground too. But out of necessity, Isaac's gone in for these first 3 games. And those numbers, you look at what he's done.
It's crazy.
He's double figures contested footy averaging over the 3 games. He's averaging 600 metres gained in all of those games. He's sticking an inside 50 between 5 and 10 times. I mean, they're midfield numbers that we haven't seen anyone put up for a long, long time. So, I'm loving watching that.
I'm loving watching him. I'm loving like Gould and Warner,
yeah,
all those guys.
How well they kick it,
mate. I love the Swans.
They kick it beautifully. The Swans. They're actually a bloody good side to watch for that reason. They kick the ball superbly.
While we're on players that we like, one player I'm nearly in love with this season is Winhager.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a...
he hasn't done it for a long period of time yet, but it could be something pretty special.
I think I'm right in saying he's a Haileybury boy, Sandy Dragons. He's from down that path. And I remember talking to the Haileybury people about him, and they just said, mate, he's a ripper. He's a ripper. And he's just going to get better and better.
Watching the footy and calling the footy, obviously you're getting the best seat in the house. I know it can be probably sometimes a bit of, you're just zoning into what's happening. But in the modern game, maybe a past player and a modern game player that you just love calling and watching.
Well, Chris Judd, as I say, I mean, Duck was, but he was playing a bit before I was really calling a lot of footy.
Yeah.
So I watched him more as a fan rather than a commentator. Whereas, I mean, Buddy was ridiculous. Especially in the first half of his career, the first 6 or 7 years, he did stuff that's just off the charts. Like stuff that you shouldn't be able to do. Just this guy's 6 foot, 6 is he?
Yeah.
Or 5, just to pick up the ball with one hand and then just burn someone, on the outside. So he's not coming back inside, turning. He's actually using wheels to get beyond someone, and then from 65, sort of mid goalpost height, slotting it. I just used to sit there going, you actually can't do that. Like that's not something you should be able to do. And he did it that often. I mean, you remember, he did it that often that it wasn't a fluke or a freak. He was that good, you know. So loved him. But then you get Triple M hat on. Then you get the Tip Rat Milne, for instance. I mean, when you got to enjoy him, but also what we did around him as a group, just to have fun with him, that was just so cool because he was a freak anyway. 600 goals.
He's a star.
But, you know, then the whole Tip Rat thing and the nibbling on the carcass and all of that. It was just so funny. And,
I love the Dennis one.
Yeah, Dennis Armfield, too good. And
that loves that too.
When that happened, Dennis Cometti was calling with us.
Yeah, right.
The legend, you know. And so we'd all be screaming out, Dennis! And Dennis would go, I'm here.
Yeah.
What do you want me to do? So he even bought into it, the great man, you know. But, yeah, I mean, a lot of that was just us piss farting around.
Push up.
Yeah, push
Dennis,
up king.
Spindle.
Yeah, Spindle. And Gary asking him about the nickname when he didn't really appreciate it. Spud just giggling away. Yeah, so a lot of that's just us. And it started with Sam. I mean, Sam used to literally get bored. So he'd just come up with something because he was bored, like the carpet snake, Fraser Gehrig. And he would just do it because he was just bored. And it just grew into something. So, yeah, they were fun. All those things are fun.
Mate, what's next for you? Do you have any things you want to tick off? Like you've done a lot.
It's funny. I'm 56 now. When I was 46, I always thought to myself, in 10 years' time, I'm hoping that my work's a bit more diversified than it is now. But getting divorced in your 50s means you've got to stay on the tools. So, you know, and as I said to that guy, I'm not, you know, I don't shovel coal, mate. I'm very privileged to do what I do. I really admire what you're doing in this space. I think content is going to be a really big thing going forward. And what I love is it's not reliant on the old streams. You know, you don't have to be attached to a radio station. You don't have to be attached to a TV station anymore. Stuff people are doing on YouTube, you know, the podcast space, social media.
Do you watch much of that stuff in the US? Like the, you know, Pat McAfee or Joe Rogan streaming the UFC and like Gogglebox type stuff?
Not that so much. I am getting right into the podcasting. So Smartless, Dak Shepard and what he's doing, I really like. And what I like about it is it's long form and it's so cruisy to listen to.
Well, that was the one thing that always, you know, look, knowing what I know now, like, could you imagine, you know, having Rush Hour just go for an hour and a half?
Yeah.
No ad breaks.
Yeah, it would be hard to get Bill to an hour and a half. He wouldn't be able to focus.
So that's where the gold would come.
Oh my God. Honestly, you and I, you can be a guest at the Rush Hour and we can be chatting and Bill will go, oh, look at that. And he'll point to the news that, you know, an elephant's broken out of a zoo and he's walking. Go, look at that. I'm like, Fat, it's radio, mate. People can't see what you can see. But that's just what he's like. He'll just blurt out something that's completely irrelevant to what you're discussing, and everyone looks at him. It's just like Ross Noble comes in every year, and he finds Bill the most fascinating person in the world because Bill can't follow any train of thought for any longer than about 8 seconds.
He's unbelievable.
And then he's got to change into something else, and he moves over here, and then he's, you know, we call him Wow Castle because he just like, you know, the goldfish swimming around.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, wow, there's a castle every time because he just, but with that is the genius of the bloke, you know, he just blurts whatever he blurts out. So yeah, I especially, I don't know about you, but the traffic in this city's I'm finding harder and harder to put up with. So if I put a podcast on, I'm about half an hour from my house to work. I find it really calming, you know, that especially Dax. I really like what he does with Monica. They've got this lovely sort of rhythm and cadence, and you know, when they get a guest in, it's just a conversation. There's no grilling of them. It's, you know, tell us about this. Oh, how was that to do? And I love how relaxed that is, and it's a very relaxed listen. So yeah, I'm doing that more than the visual stuff. Although I'm a big NFL fan, so I love the way they broadcast NFL footy. I mean, it looks great because they've got that much money that you know, they just throw millions of dollars at the production. But it looks
like the Manning brothers and stuff like that.
Awesome!
Yeah.
I love what they're doing.
I think that obviously in the next little bit, but I'm sure you know, working with Seven, you know, like those digital rights are up.
Yep.
it's going to be pretty interesting to see what happens in the
Well,
next
how
few
good's
years.
that?
Yeah.
I mean, they just get a bloke in, and the three of them just talk smack while the game's going on, and they reference a play every 5 minutes. Otherwise, they just chat away.
That's what we're starting next week. We've already done some little bits and pieces, but we've got a little studio here at the back that we're just going to put the footy on, 7 seconds behind. You can link it up with KO, whatever you're doing. It's just sort of talking shit. Awesome.
I love it. And it's the choice we've got now in our business is quite ridiculous. I mean, we're only talking to Rosie Walton the other day about what's on available to watch at the moment. We were talking about Masters of the Air on Apple TV, The Gentleman, New Look, the thing about Coco Chanel. I mean, I don't think, Dylan, there's been this quality on offer on television, as in that type of product, en masse in my lifetime.
We're too spoiled for choice, though.
Yeah, we are.
That's the point. It's actually hard to pick something because you just fucking stream along it all day and just don't even know what to pick.
Well, and that's why I can't work out the whole reality thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm probably too old for it.
I'm not into the reality
but
stuff.
Maths, I always look at people and go, how can you watch that when you got this stuff available to you? It's the best television I can ever remember being made, and it's everywhere.
It's just like you don't have to think.
It must be.
Yeah.
Well, my beautiful wife watches Below Deck. That's her. That's her one. And I come home and I go, darling, I'm not sure how you're watching this. But she just says the same thing.
Oh mate, we have no vices.
It's just an
escape. You
escape.
could probably say that about maybe some of the blokes that listen to the Russian.
Triple M.
Yeah, exactly.
No, you not probably could. You absolutely could.
Jim, mate, we really appreciate your time.
Pleasure,
Thank you
mate.
so much for everything, mate. As I said, not only am I a big fan, but you've been a big pioneer in this field and doing it, and we're absolutely loving it. So it's an honour to get you on the pod and have a chat.
Well, good luck with it all too, mate. You're heading in a really cool direction, and I know you're taking a lot of people with you, and that's the other thing. I mean, we were talking about Dax before. If you deep dive into what he's done, not only did he do the first of those Hollywood podcasts, but now it's spawned 20, 30 shows and a big business, and a lot of people have ridden that wave in with him. And I know that's what you're doing too, so it's not just about your show, but it's about a lot of people
100%.
ending up, I know this is the same with Hutchie. People are so quick to criticise Hutchie, I can never work out why. Because he might have, I don't know, 200 people, 300 people, I don't know what his staff, he's putting food on their table, they're paying a mortgage, they're leasing a car, their kids are going to schools. How can you be critical of a bloke who's setting up a network that's achieving that for 300-400 people?
Yeah, it's huge.
It's just nuts. And you've got it, whether you like what it is or not, that's not the point. The point is he's got his oar in the water and he's having a crack. And so are you, mate. I admire you.
Thank you, mate. I appreciate it.